everyone. Today we will be going over Java Lesson 2, updating variables, concatenation, typecasting, and operators. So what do each of these things do? Well, they each help you manipulate variables. Manipulate values in your variables. So let's go on to the first topic, which is updating variables. So updating variables basically means setting a variable to a new value. So what's the syntax for it? Well, the syntax, it's really simple. It's just the name of your variable, and you have to set it equal to the new value. But note here that you don't put the data type. Again, just like when you make a variable, you usually have the data type, then the variable name, then the value, right? But right now we're updating it. We don't want to make a new one. And that's why we do not we don't write the data type again, because that would be making a whole new variable. So yeah, so when you create it, the data type is already specified, right? When you created this variable, so you don't have to specify it again when you update it. And you can only set new values that have the data type as the variable was initialized to be. So for example, if you have an integer, you can only set it to whole numbers. If you have an integer variable, you can only set it to whole numbers, and you cannot set it to like a string or something like that, because that just wouldn't work. And you can also update variables by changing its original value. And we'll talk more about this in our next topics. So why don't we just try this out? So let's go here. You can just make a new repo, which I've already done. So let's start out with making an integer variable. So I'm going to say int num equals 2. Now to update it, let's say I want num to be 4 now. So all I have to do is I just write num equals 4. So just to see if this actually works, we're going to print these out first here. And then next here, just to make sure that this works correctly and this variable was updated. See, this is just the same num variable. It was first 2 and now it's 4. So this works. So now let's go to the next topic, which is concatenation. So concatenation basically just is for adding strings together. So you can also add string variables to other string variables or string, and this can be used for printing or creating or updating variables. So let me try this out. So let's go back to program, and instead of doing int, I'm going to have a string variable, and I'm just going to call it, say, my name here. And so let's say I want to add an exclamation to it. So what I would do is I would make a new variable in this case, and I'm going to say string. And now let's print out this exclamation variable. Let's see what happens. So why don't you pause this video and try to figure out what you think this program will print out. And after you thought about it, you can continue the video and see if you're right. So let's see what this will print out. Yeah, so it printed out this. So basically to concatenate, all you have to do is just add a plus sign between whatever you want to concatenate. So see, we to concatenate this bliss and exclamation mark, we just created a new variable and we just added these two together. So you don't necessarily have to create a new variable to do this. You can also update a variable like that. So what we would do is, instead of having this, we can do name equals name. So what is this doing? Well, we know that name is bliss, right? So this is essentially saying bliss plus exclamation mark, right? And so that would become, so this should print out the same thing. Let's see if it does that. Yeah, prints out the same thing. Now let's try it a different way. Instead of updating a variable, why don't we not have a variable at all and just print it here? Let's see if that would work, right? We can just print it in this print function. It does not have to be a single variable. You can basically print whatever string you want. So we're gonna just do here. Let's see if that works. So that's basically three different uses for and three different places where you can concatenate strings. So another thing you can do is, what if I wanted to put something before this? I wanted to print out hello this exclamation mark. So there are basically three different ways that you can print this out. One is to make a new string variable. The second is to update name, and the third is just to not necessarily make a new variable, but do it right in the print function. So I'm going to show you the second way first. Name equals, and I'm putting a space here because we want a space between hello and bliss. So let's see if this let's see if this works. Yeah. So that's basically how you concatenate strings. So let's move on to the next topic, which is operators. So these operators are basically how to perform math operations on numerical variables, such as integers and floats. And you can only perform these math operations on numerical variables, right? Because you can't multiply a, for example. That's just, you can't do that. So these are the different operators that you have. Addition is just with adding, is just the plus symbol. Subtracting you do with the subtraction symbol. Multiply is the asterisk. Divide is the slash. Parentheses are for, you want to specify, I want to do this part of the expression first. And then there's also this new thing called modulus. So modulus is used for basically returning the division remainder. So let's say, why don't we try it out here? So let's have an integer variable. We're going to call it number. I'm going to set it equal to 4. So let's first perform. So let's say I wanted to find the remainder of 4 divided by 2, right? So what I would do is I would just say And the remainder should be 0. So let's see if it is. Yeah. So basically, for using operations, you just have to put the operator between the two numbers that it's just like in regular math, how you would do it. And you can also do this with just plain numbers, or you can also do this with variables, because the variable is a number, right, in this case. And that's basically it. So you can also update variables, right, with if while performing math operations on it. For example, instead of making a whole new variable, I could just say and that's the same thing as saying number equals 4 modulus 2. So why don't I try another one? And this time let's make 2 integer variables and perform an operation on it. So I'm going to make int. So just to be clear about what we're doing is we're basically multiplying 700 by 400 and then subtracting 400 from it. Let's see if it does that. Yeah, so yeah, so that's the number we got. So that's basically it on operators. Now let's move on to assignment operators. So basically, this is a more simpler way of updating and performing on an operation on a variable at the same time. So, for example, if I wanted to subtract 20 from number 1, I would first have to do number 1 equals number 1 minus 20, right? Well, to make this simpler, you could also just do minus equals 20. So basically, you have your variable here, and then you have your operator here, then you have equal, and then you have the number, like the other number that you're using. So this is exactly the same as this. So let's try it. So let's just see that and make sure that that is true. So I'm just gonna print out the variable here. Oh, yeah, these give different values because I did the same thing twice, right? So it's subtracting 20 from 700, and then it's subtracting 20 from 20 again. So that would give me 680 and then 660. But you can still see that they do exactly the same thing. Both of them are subtracting 20 from the variable number 1. So why don't we try this with another operation? Let's say I wanted to multiply number 1 with a different variable. Let's say I'm going to multiply, let's say the next variable would be number 2. And so I wanted to multiply number 1 with number 2. So what I would do is to update number 1 with this new value, I would do times equals, right? Because we're trying to multiply. Then we're going to do number 2. Now this is basically the same thing as saying that number 1 equals number 1 times number 2, which is the same thing as saying number 1 equals 660 times 2, which should give me one. So let's see if it does. Yes. So that's how operators basically work. So let's move on to typecasting. Typecasting is basically just converting one value from one data type to another. So the syntax depends on what data type this value is in currently and what data type you're trying to convert this into. So for example, to convert anything into a string, all you really do is just, you don't really have to do anything special. You just have to concatenate into a string and it works fine. So for example, if I want, let's say I have this integer called int. And the only really real reason why you would want to convert this into a string is if you want to concatenate it with other strings, right? Well, all you really have to do is just concatenate it like in the exact same way. There is no special syntax, so I would just have to write And so this is because, again, the computer is smart enough to know that, oh, in order to concatenate it to this string, I will have to first convert this into a string and do it. It does not work like this automatically for other data types. It's just with converting something into a string. So, yeah. So, like for example, if we have this, it would work the exact same way. So why don't we move on to converting from a string into any other data type, right? So the syntax would be having your data type, then having your variable name that you want, because we'll be making a new variable, and then data type dot value of the string variable name. So to do that, so that sounds kind of abstract. Why don't we just try this out? So I'm going to have a string. And then to convert it into an integer, we're going to do int. So in this case, for this value of syntax, you will always have to you're gonna have to use integer instead of int. And I can't really say why, that's just how the syntax is. And for other data types, such as floats or booleans, you're always gonna have to capitalize the first letter of that data type. So for example, let me just finish this. For example, if I wanted to do this with a boolean, and I've got string, then I would have to do boolean capitalized dot value. And so let's move back on to our integer, right? So the reason why you would want to convert from a string into an integer is if you want to perform a mathematical operation on 2. You won't be able to do it in the string format because you can't multiply strings, you can't do mathematical operations on strings, but you would be able to do it when it's in an integer. So to do this, so to make sure that it has correctly converted and that's done, we're going to add 1 to our integer, and then we're going to print it out. So this should print out 3, right? Because we added 1 to it. So let's see if it prints it out. Yeah, there we go. So let's move on to the third part, which is to which basically deals with other variables such as converting from float to integer, integer to floats, and converting into char as well. So these all follow the same syntax of you have your new data type that you want, you have your new variable name, and then you have this new data type again in parentheses, and then you have your old variable name. So why don't we test this out, right? How it's gonna work. So first I'm gonna have, let's make a int variable. And then I want to convert this into a float. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do float. Then I'm gonna have float again in parentheses. Decimal. And now just to make sure this works, we're gonna print this out. Printing out is a good way to make sure, printing out different parts of your code is a good way to make sure that your code works the way you want it to. Yeah. So that's how you would convert convert it this way. So now let's move on to the assignment. So the assignment basically is just to make variables, update their value, convert their data types, and concatenate print out strings. So basically everything that we've talked about. And the steps for us accessing and creating and submitting the assignment is exact same as before. So this is the link. You're going to go here, new REPL, import, then import from GitHub. And then the language is going to be Java, and then it's going to be Java lesson2.java, because that's the file name. Done. So this is how lesson 2 looks like. I'm just gonna have to make a Boolean variable, and I'll concatenate it to a string and change the value of it. And then you're gonna make it a string again and print it out. And then with integer, you're going to make an integer variable use an assignment operator, make a new variable, right? Convert it into a float and print out both variables. So that's basically the assignment, and that's basically, and all you have to do is, again, I'm gonna hit invite. You can either enter in my email or you can generate a link, right? Copy it, send it to me, or then click invite. So that's basically it. That's all I have for you today. And reminder, the Q&A session is on Fridays, so make sure you turn in your assignment by Thursday. Thank you so much, and that's it.